Hi, everyone, and welcome to Out of Trauma, Back to Happiness. And I can only say you are in the right workshop. Amazing and a really warm welcome. And let's get started. So I want to share a story with you. Many years back, I think at least 12 years back, my phone was ringing. On the phone, on the other side was a woman. She cried into the telephone. She said, "Oh, I really need an appointment with you." I said, "Okay, what's going on? How can I help you?" And then she said to me, "I feel really stupid. My name is Halima, and I am 40 years old. I am a professional medical doctor. I feel really ridiculous, but here is the thing why I need to talk to you. I am pregnant with my second baby. I lost my first baby in the early weeks of the pregnancy last year. And now I'm pregnant again. But honestly, I'm 10 weeks pregnant. Every week I have to run to emergency and get a check out to see if my baby is still alive. And every time I go to the toilet, I have to check if there's blood on my toilet paper." Well, I said to this woman, "Wow, that sounds very stressful. How about you come over and we do a session?" And so she came and we took a session. And after the first session, and what I did, I will reveal a little later for you. After the first session, she rang me and she said, "It feels so good. I don't have to go when I go to the toilet. I don't have to check the toilet paper all the time. I can just go and pee like everyone else." And so I asked her to come for another session. And after that session, a few days later, she rang me and she said, "I feel so relieved. I feel so calm now. And I can actually wait 4 to 5 weeks for my next appointment without feeling scared or feeling crazy and having to go to emergency every week." So hi, my name's Jutta. I'm an international midwife, coach, trainer, and speaker, and I've been this for 40 years. I've attended around 3,000 babies being born, and I've lived and practiced in 3 countries on 2 continents, and I've really seen birth in all circumstances. Now, because I am a curious person, I didn't rest and wanted to understand how can I help all those couples, women, even other midwives in this amazing time of their life. And so at one stage, I got into trauma, and a bit more about trauma and about my journey with trauma comes a little later. I wanted to show you I am a true expert of birth, and I have worked with 10,000s of women from all over the world, whether it was in New Zealand, in Australia, in Germany, and I specialize with working with expats. And trauma is one of the things that I feel are of great importance. Now, why am I so keen on working with trauma? Because when you understand how birth works, you also know that trauma, no matter where trauma came from, is going to be a huge blockage, not only in your life, but a huge blockage for your birth, and also something that could stop you from living a fulfilled, happy life after the birth, during your pregnancy, and depending on that. So trauma, in fact, is something that probably almost everyone knows, because life is just as life is, and you cannot avoid having some kind of trauma. The question is, what are you doing with that, and what can we do as birth professionals, as moms-to-be, as anyone who is involved in this amazing time, pregnancy, birth, and the time after, to really help women and their partners overcome trauma and to come back to happiness. Now, my true belief is everyone deserves to be happy. And after 40 years, 3,000 babies being born and 10,000s of women in my care, I think I can share some true insights with you. Now, the woman I talked about before, Halima, she was actually able, after the session I did with her, to enjoy her pregnancy, prepare herself in mind and body, and to have an amazing birth at 41 weeks. Except the fact that, more things happened, and this is just as life is. And in her case, it was her mother. Her mother suffers from a very bad heart condition. And the mother came to visit her here in Berlin. And while the mother was here, when Halima was 40 weeks pregnant, she suffered a heart attack and almost passed away. And so this was another very stressful event for this woman. But because Halima already had learned good strategies and came back to me to see me for one more coaching session, she was able to stay calm, to stay resilient, and to focus on her pregnancy and her birth. And she gave birth just a few days later while her mom was still in intensive care, and she was able to do both. Now, this is a very amazing story, and I will share many more stories in this small presentation with you. So what is trauma? Trauma is, in fact, a lot of things. Now, people have different concepts of trauma. When we think about giving birth, it could be something that is actually happening at the birth. It could be something that has happened in the pregnancy. It could be things like you have an emergency C-section and you were looking for instance, a home birth or a natural birth. It could be also that people act in a way with you that feels like people take over, almost like violence at birth. It could be that things happen to you, to your body, to your baby, and that can leave you feeling traumatized. Now, some people will have a traumatic experience where others would think, well, what's the problem? But this is not the point to judge. Whatever the person is feeling and whatever the person is experiencing is actually their story. And we should just respectfully accept that people are different. Now, I have worked with so many women and so many traumas. Now, here's the problem that all of us are facing in the modern world of 2023. First of all, I'm sure you're aware of that. We're facing a global crisis in birthing. 30 to 80% of a C-section rate globally. Now that already is something that is difficult. So it often leaves women feeling low, depressed. The postnatal rate of depression is rising. And it creates a problem because there's very little positive stories to look for. And so there's very small resources of positive things happening. Depending on in which country we are actually looking at, whether it's the US, whether it's, places like Egypt, Brazil, almost 90% of a C-section rate, Egypt, almost 90%, India, if you're privately insured, definitely 90% of a C-section rate, and so on. So we really have to look at the whole picture and think, what's the problem with all of that? Now, with the rising number of C-section, of course, the number of postnatal depression has gone up, and I believe a lot of women feel traumatized from their birth. But it's not only the women, it is in fact their partners as well. Life is sometimes just as life is. We don't have life in our hand, do we? We cannot control life. And so I want to give you a personal story how I got into working with trauma. Now, I told you earlier, I've been a professional midwife since 1986. I already started my professional training in 1983. I trained according to Frédéric Leboyer, who, of course, was the man who brought back natural childbirth even to German hospitals in the 70s and 80s. This is how I was brought up as a professional midwife. Now, during my life, I've been doing lots of different things. I've worked in all circumstances as a midwife, home birth, birth center, water births in the 90s, small hospital, big hospital in many countries. But I saw different things happening all over the place to all those women. And in 2015, I actually traveled to Nepal, and I was, in fact, right in the heart of Kathmandu when this major earthquake in 2015 in April happened in Nepal. Now, I was very lucky. Nothing happened to me. However, after staying for 2 weeks in Nepal, helping a lot of people, returning to Germany, I felt really traumatized. I was sitting at home crying all day long. And luckily, I was booked for an advanced NLP trainers training, which happened to be 2 weeks later. So what I learned from my own experience is that, yes, there is ways how we can overcome trauma very quickly and how we can look at the event that had happened in the past, knowing it was not a very nice event, but not be feeling emotionally attached. And this is usually the problem that happens. Now, we cannot avoid trauma, but what we can do is we can learn how to help people in general to overcome trauma, to let it go, even when we're not therapists. Sometimes, of course, to just be the gap between the time when they can see someone professional, and that will depend again on our skill range and on in which country we are. But I think no one in the whole entire planet has to stay traumatized, and there is the thing. Now, if you understand how neurology and the brain works at the birth, then you know, for instance, that the fight and flight reflex is triggered whenever we feel scared, stressed, or traumatized, because trauma is one thing that happens. But what most people do is they repeat the movie in their head over and over and over again. And so in a way, they have experienced this trauma once, but they can't let go of it. And so in their head, they will go through this trauma over and over and over again. And when that happens is you relive the trauma and it becomes very big and it suddenly fills a big part of your life. Now, sometimes there are certain triggers connected with it. Could be a smell, could be a sound, could be a sentence, could be an activity someone is doing. And that could be a way how trauma is triggered. Say like thinking about the earthquake, shaking off the ground, just because you might be standing on a platform of a train or a subway could trigger it, and things like this. But here is the other thing. Yeah, for instance, could be that you had trauma a long time ago. Now, I worked with women who were sexually abused, misabused, all these kind of things. And of course, their trauma was not related to pregnancy or birth, but they really wanted to overcome that to be sure that all the way is free so that they can give birth. So I'd like to share a story of a woman called Johanna. Johanna was sent to me by her midwife. So Johanna had a private midwife to come along to the birth. She was pregnant with her first baby. And the first time I saw her, she entered the room and she greeted me like this. Hello, Jutta. I'm here to see you. She was almost whispering, very shy. And so when she sat down, I asked her, okay, how can I help you? What is your story? Now, Johanna was already in her early 30s, pregnant with her first baby. And in her childhood, she had been sexually abused by her own father, and the mother always ignoring the fact that she probably on a level understood what was going on. So Johanna was sexually abused from very young age. And when she had a younger brother who was about 3 years younger than her, she stayed home to protect her younger brother and then finally left her parents at the age of 17. So now she was pregnant. She found a beautiful husband who really understood her whole story, and she wanted to marry him, and they were ready to get married. But for some reason, still, her parents would come to the wedding. Now we can discuss that, but we won't, because that was the story of her life. So for her, it was very important how to handle it in a way that it felt good for her, to be in enough distance, and then also thinking about the upcoming birth, thinking what would she do if there would be a problem and only men, like a first consultant, an anesthetist, someone like that, would only be available on the day. Of course, she had her husband and her midwife visiting rights, but that was a topic we worked on. And we worked on this with different techniques. So here's the story of her birth. First of all, she got married. All of that worked out fine. And when she gave birth, she later on told me she released the amniotic fluid and the baby's heart rate wasn't doing so great. So she said, I was lying there and then I was thinking, what can I do? What can I do? And so she decided to focus on the things that we had achieved in our coaching sessions. And so she said, I stood up, I moved my body as I'd learned it in pregnancy yoga. I told myself, come on, Johanna, you can open up and you can do it together with your baby. And the whole situation improved. And she finally gave birth while standing up. Wow, that was amazing. But in her case, as you know, the thing is, don't we say what you resist is what persists? So of course, what happened in her case, she had a tear that was bleeding quite heavily, and it wasn't quite clear where this bleeding was coming from. So the team had to be called on. And on that day, it was a team only of men, a male anesthetist, a male first consultant. And so it was exactly the situation that she always had on her mind. So the first consultant came, the anesthetist came, and they did everything they had to do. And she later on said to me, you know, Jutta, one thing I really want to share with you. What was the best learning and the best outcome for me in this whole situation is, even that I'd been always so afraid of exactly this happening, I told the first consultant, you know, you are the first man ever that has permission to examine me. And he was very gentle and he was very understanding because he knew her story. And she said afterwards to me, you know what? But being able to experience that allowed me to feel really empowered and to actually even heal my own story. Now, I saw her after the birth when she came with her little baby in her arm. It was very interesting. She had a different haircut. She entered the room with her baby and she said, hello, Jutta. It's us. It's me and my gorgeous little daughter. And look, I just wanted to present her to you. And she always said to me that this was an amazing change in her life. So letting go of trauma can not only heal the trauma, but of course can also allow you to step into your real authentic self. Now, what are the things that are happening and how do you know someone is traumatized? Because traumatized people are not always going to tell you, hey, I had a big trauma. Say, like you see someone after the birth or during the pregnancy, and when you ask them, how do you feel about this or that? How do you feel about giving birth? And how do you feel in general? You often will discover that they will come out with a story, say, I cannot sleep anymore. Now you have to understand, are they not able to sleep just because it's hot or their hips are sore? Or is there something else going on? It will be up to you and your communication skills to really discover what is going on. But when it comes to birth, often women will tell you afterwards, I had an awful birth, this and that happened. And now I have problems sleeping. I don't feel good. Because often when trauma happens, the person is almost frozen. And often they feel like they have done something wrong, which of course they haven't. It's not that they've done something wrong. It is just what happens. Now I will give you a few more stories of clients I've worked with. So what we need to install back into all those women, their partners, or even into the person that has been with them is, first of all, we have to take the guilt and the shame of something went wrong, even that I had done this or that before. We have to take them off them. Because often when you feel traumatized, you feel like it's your fault, you did something, or you haven't done something, like you didn't act. And it's not because you didn't want to act. It's sometimes just when you get so stressed or fearful and your fight and flight reflex is triggered, then sometimes you go into freeze and that won't allow you to do anything. Now, another problem with trauma is that in our brain, the amygdala, the two almonds that are attached to our limbic system, are the fire alarm of the brain. And if the fire alarm, which you of course know from your home, isn't switched off properly, it constantly goes, and what happens in our brain is that when the fire alarm is constantly running, certain parts of our brain cannot be activated. And these are the parts of the brain where we also have happy memories of our life, joyful moments, moments where we felt empowered, where we felt good, where we felt confident. So we need to lower our amygdala, relax the amygdala, turn the fight and flight reflex, what is left over, turn it off, and then really switch the trauma off so that we can create a deep inner feeling of calmness, peacefulness, confidence, and also a feeling of hope. So I want to share another story with you, because I think stories are good. They show you what worked. A woman came to see me and she said to me that she had given birth. Oops. Thank you. That's what happens when we record live. So that she had given birth 7 months ago. She had planned a natural birth. She told me I was always a confident person. I loved my body. She's married to a man from South America. She's German. I love dancing, music, moving. I always felt really comfortable in my own body. And now I had a C-section, an emergency C-section, and I feel awful and I can't even touch my own belly anymore. And she really cried. And so, you know, trauma gets stored in our body. Trauma can be stored in certain movements that we do. Trauma is something that constantly runs in our head. It shows up in all kinds of ways. But often when we had trauma, we give ourselves this negative internal dialogue constantly. We tell ourselves we're stupid. Why did we do that? Why did this happen? What have we done wrong? And so we really all day long tell ourselves a story about ourselves that is awful. So the first thing we should always talk about is the internal voice in your head. So I always say, welcome to your prefrontal cortex. It talks to you all day long. And so what can you do? Now, one technique that I want to share with you is that when you close your eyes, I'd like you to bring your thumb forward, your left or right, okay? I'd like you to even yourself think, when you have a negative talk, and I think everyone knows this negative nagging voice in your head, then I'd please ask you to bring it forward and take it like 12 meters or 12 yards away. And I'd like you to hear it from the distance of 12 yards away. And I'd like it, even if it says exactly the same things, you know, you're stupid, you're no good, why did you do that, all of that. I'd like you to really feel like as if you float above yourself and you see as the voice talks to you 12 meters or 12 yards away. And it's very, what did you say? Ah, okay. And that's already one way how you can change the voices in your head. Okay, so bring your thumb down. So with her, I started doing things like this. Then, of course, I asked her to think about moments in her life where she felt empowered, where she felt confident, where she felt good about everything and anything she had done. And so with her, I worked a few times, and the finale was that she celebrated the first birthday of her baby, telling me that because of our session, she was able to touch her body again, but also feel like that she could celebrate the first birthday. Because here is the other problem. If a birth is traumatic, of course, every time when you think the birthday is coming up, you're twisted. One part of you wants to celebrate the birthday. Another part of you wants to cry and say, my God, it was the worst day of my life. So I want to share the story of Gloria. Now, Gloria is a woman from Peru. Again, she lives here in Berlin. And Gloria wanted to have a birth center birth with her first baby. She had a wonderful pregnancy. It was all going very, very well. And she went overdue 4 days, so nothing really special. She went to the birth center, but something wasn't quite right with her baby. You know, I believe birth works, but every now and then we need a bit of extra help. Now, unfortunately, I think the whole situation wasn't handled very well. Maybe it was a communication problem. They sent her to the hospital, but not really telling her that there was a problem. When she arrived in the hospital, they put her on the monitor. And of course, the baby's heart rate in her case was really very, very poorly. And so the doctor yelled at her and said, you need an emergency C-section. And she said, well, can I call my husband? They said, no, you cannot call your husband, because if you call your husband and we wait for him, your baby will be dead. Now, this is a very, very bad thing of acting. But of course, people just reacted emotionally. So they took her just as she was, wheeled her into the theater and gave her a full anesthesia and then got the baby out. Now, when she woke up, she thought, oh my God, my baby is dead, because she couldn't see the baby. And she felt, oh my God, I've done something wrong. My baby has died. This is really awful. So this was already on top of the trauma that she had to have an emergency C-section, that she was told, if you do this and that, you're going to kill your baby. Now she really felt like, okay, that has happened. So finally, they brought her the baby and showed it to her. And her husband arrived. All of this happened. But, you know, she felt very low in the time after the birth, lots of crying, lots of problems with bonding. And when I met her, she was pregnant with her second baby. Now, she came to one of my yoga classes, and I didn't know anything about her. So a few days later, I think 2 days later, I met her in the supermarket, and I said, hey, have you not just been to my yoga class? And I said, wow, thank you. And I said to her, well, how are you feeling? How is it going? You know, I'm a chatty person. And so I said to her, well, have you found a midwife already? And she said, no, I was thinking about contacting you. And I said, that's great. And I said, is this your first or your second baby? She said, the second. And I made a mistake. I said, oh, and how was the first birth? And she burst out into tears right in the supermarket. Now, this clearly showed me, wow, the birth must have been really bad. She hasn't really worked through this trauma, because otherwise she wouldn't start crying in the middle of a supermarket just because of a question, how was the first birth? So I was thinking, wow, that's a very unfortunate thing in the middle of the supermarket. So I comforted her and I gave her an appointment. So when I met her then in my appointment, I asked her and she told me the whole story. And so I told her that it's very important to work on this trauma. If this trauma exists, it's going to block probably, well, the whole happiness in this pregnancy, but also most likely the next birth. And that for sure would be a very bad thing. Well, so we decided to work together. And when she was ready to give birth around her due date, I was not close by because I had to do something, look after my dementia dad. So she rang me, it was around Christmas. She said, Jutta, I ruptured my membranes. And I said, yeah, it's very unfortunate. Now you have to go to the hospital. You can't just stay at home. And so she did. They examined her. And she signed a paper to go on her own responsibility back home for another 12, 13 hours. She did that, then she returned to the hospital. And of course, they wanted to induce her. So she hesitated a bit. Then she said, I'm going to go for a mechanical induction of labor, but I don't want to have any hormones because I'm afraid I will end up with another C-section. Now, she ended up in a room with another woman, and this woman, she told me, was very noisy, constantly washing her hair, blow drying her, speaking on the telephone. And so the woman in my care is a very soft and gentle person. She speaks with a soft voice. She's very shy, very gentle. And so she rang me in the morning and she cried into the telephone and she said, Jutta, really, I feel like I can't get into the zone. I just can't get into it. And I said to her, well, that's the thing. You have to really empower yourself. You have to stand up for your rights. And so she said, I know I can go into labor. I said, yeah, I know you can do that. So she went back to labor ward. She asked the midwife, can I have a room to myself? Because if I have a bit of peace of quietness and I can really go deep inside and, you know, create pictures in my mind and have my husband with me, I truly know I will go into labor. So the midwife was smart and gave her a room. So she asked the husband to come in. I think the husband came, you know, there's this old saying, hugs before drugs. And of course, touch will really help us to feel better. So they did that. They also did some nipple stimulation. And so my client gave birth 6 hours later, all by herself, feeling really empowered and giving birth to a baby, very large, 4,700 grams. So why am I telling you the story? Later on, my client told me that the second birth healed the first birth, that the first birth with this rough emergency C-section, even that it probably was necessary, almost felt as if she had been raped. So just to show you, women will feel like this. They will feel like you cut me open just like a piece of meat. You took over. I was not part of the decision making. I was put down. I was told to shut up. I couldn't do it. I feel like a loser. All these kind of thoughts will go through a woman's mind when all of that happens. And it will leave her scarred and marked for the rest of her life if she doesn't do anything. And whatever happened in your life, whatever will happen in the future, whatever happened at the birth, you know, the thing is, when you have abilities to calm yourself, to dissociate yourself out of the situation, then you have the power to let go in a certain way of trauma. And you have to, because trauma will stop you from enjoying a happy pregnancy, enjoying a positive birth, and feeling good about yourself. Now, one more story I want to tell you, and then I'm going to go a bit into some practical stuff. Now, this client of mine I talked about in the beginning, the one that came to me and saw me some years back, a very smart woman from Pakistan, an IT specialist, really so smart, that told me, I'm too busy in my second pregnancy. I run a big team. I have no time. I'll be fine, even if my daughter is already 5 years old. Now, she ended up in a total birth disaster, if I could say so, because I told her, look, you have to do something, because Just because you won the Olympic Games once doesn't mean you don't have to prepare for the second round of games. Really? Yes, really. We're not going to give birth to 10 children in our life anymore. We might give birth to 1, 2, or 3 average. And so we still wanted an event that we look after, that we prepare for, and that we get mentally and physically ready. So in her second birth, what I said, a total birth disaster happened. So for some reason, this birth didn't really get ongoing. So of course, they started doing all kinds of things to induce the labor, put a pitocin drip up, gave a lot of hormones, ruptured the membranes. And what happened is that the baby's heart rate dropped so deeply that she had to have a real emergency C-section, almost in the labor ward bed. So this is usually then done in full anesthesia. So she was completely knocked out, and something went wrong with even her anesthesia. So she woke up in IT, and her first question was, oh my God, am I still alive? The baby had been taken to the neonatal unit. Cheers. And so she didn't see her baby. She thought maybe her baby is dead. I'm dead. And isn't that an awful feeling? So she told me, it took about 24 hours until she was reunited with her baby. And she felt so poorly that she thought, oh God, maybe I'm not going to make it. I might die. So when they finally went home after a few days, the baby was then doing fine. She was doing fine. However, she told me she was sitting at home and crying for almost 4 weeks every day. So that her older daughter said, Mama, I want to help you. Now, I was abroad. She contacted me, and as soon as I was back, we met. And we agreed that, you know, crying is not a good thing. It takes a lot of strength and a lot of inner power. And also thinking that this is the picture her daughter actually has of what birth is about. And that a 5-year-old should never step up in the role helping you, because, you know, a 5-year-old is a 5-year-old and should really stay a 5-year-old. So we started working on releasing that trauma. And after 2 sessions, my client felt already so much better, so relieved, and felt like, okay, she could look back on the birth, knowing it was not the greatest day of her life, of course, but not having to cry, not feeling bad anymore, and also being able to talk about it without crying, which changed the whole situation for herself, her partner, and for her baby. And so here is a few strategies when you meet someone that had trauma or that has an old trauma. So talking is one thing. I'm quite happy to listen to some of the stories, but here's my real opinion as an NLP trainer. Just talking is not helping. Otherwise, no one would have a trauma. Of course, in the beginning, we need to speak about it, but then comes a point where we constantly repeat ourselves, and we actually anchor and relive the trauma over and over and over again. So most of the people that are traumatized, of course, need a few things. First of all, they often don't sleep well. That's not helping. They feel guilty. They feel ashamed. So we have to verbally also reassure them that it's not their fault, no need to be ashamed, and all of that. But the first technique I want to show you is a method called havening. And it's a very calming method to allow you to show this to your client and to do it. Because even if you are not a therapist, a coach or something, when we come to someone that has had trauma, or we as midwives meet someone that has trauma, it's always fantastic to offer them something. So I will show you a couple of exercises that I usually give my clients as a homework. And so the first thing we always do is we ask them to close their eyes and to think about a time where they felt empowered, where they felt like they did something good, where they go back to happy moments. And we want to recollect a few moments. So it's always good to ask them, Or, you know, maybe when you were a kid, remember a moment in your life when you were very happy. It could be like when you had your first bicycle or something like this, yeah? So you want to kind of create an outlook on things that have gone well, where you felt well, where you did well, and it can be from a long time ago, okay? So that's always something to reconnect with. Then the next thing is you ask the person together with you to very softly rub their hands, very slowly. And then we're going to stroke down the arms like that, just down to your elbows. And then we'll ask, okay, let's go for a nice walk, 20 steps. And we could take a walk on the beach if the person likes the beach, or we can take a walk through the forest if the person likes the forest, or somewhere in a landscape with mountains. So let's take the beach. So I'd like to invite you to close your eyes, to see yourself on a beach. It's a wonderful day. The sun is shining. Maybe you can hear some birds singing. You can feel the sun as it gently warms your back. You take in a nice deep breath and you start walking. 20. 19, feel the sun warming your back. 18, with each and every step. 17, 16, you look to the ocean, you see the waves coming. 15, 14, you see the waves going. 13, with each and every step, feeling so good. 12, feeling as every muscle in your body starts to release, relax, let go. 11, you might look up to the sky and see the clouds. 10, as the clouds move over the sky. 9, you let your thoughts come. 8, you let your thoughts go. 7, walking along the beach. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Keep on stroking, open your eyes, and horizontally look to the right with your eyes, look to the left, look to the right, 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 look to the left. One more time, look to the right, look to the left. Rub your hands, take a nice deep breath. Okay, let's take another walk. Let's take a walk through a beautiful garden filled with amazing flowers, trees, butterflies. So again, a glorious day. So if you like, you can close your eyes or you can keep them open. And let's go, stroking down. 20, as you walk through the garden. 19, you see all the colors of the flowers. 18, all the different shapes. 17, you take a nice deep breath. 16, you exhale. You let it all go. 15, you see the beautiful green grass. 15, look, a butterfly. 14, 13, it's so peaceful. 12, look around, see all the different plants. 11, as you step with each and every step through the garden. 10, 9, 8, see the butterfly flying up. 7, as it drifts down. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Open your eyes. Look to the right horizontally. Look to the left. Look to the right. 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 Look to the left. Release. Take in a nice deep breath. Open your lips. Exhale deeply. Now you can always repeat this, or you can take a few more rounds. And that is a really fantastic method that will help you to create a bit more space and to feel more calm and to have a sense of peacefulness within yourself. And that's something your clients can do. Anyone can do it. Doesn't matter who you are. And it feels really, really fantastic. I'm sure you have noticed. Now, another thing that often happens is when people are traumatized, they often don't know that breathing would be a wonderful method to help them to also relax. So I want to show you a very nice breathing exercise that, again, doesn't take very long, but also brings positive thoughts to our mind. And I'm going to show you, and then we'll do it together, all right? So what we do is we inhale, we will hold our breath, we will smile while holding our breath, we will roll our shoulders up, and we roll our shoulders down. Roll our shoulders up, roll our shoulders down. Roll our shoulders up, and roll our shoulders down. Excellent. We're still holding our breath, smiling. Then we exhale through our open lips. We bring our hands forward and we do a tiger paw exhale. We round our back. We go. Then we release the hands, and we'll do this a few times, okay? So let's do it again. And please join me and have this experience, how it feels, okay? Ready? Good. Inhale. Hold your breath, smile, roll your shoulders up, roll your shoulders down, roll your shoulders up, roll your shoulders down, roll your shoulders up, roll your shoulders down. Bring your hands forward, open lips, exhale, chin to chest, round your spine, tiger pose. Release the hands. One more happy round. Inhale. Hold your breath. Roll your shoulders up. Roll your shoulders down. Roll your shoulders up. Roll your shoulders down. Roll your shoulders up. Roll your shoulders down. Smile. Bring your hands forward. Exhale, tiger pose. Bring your hands back, and that's it. So that's an excellent way of calming your mind, have a more positive mindset. And that's a very simple exercise everyone can do, no matter who you are. And you can do it while pregnant, you can do it while after you've given birth. Yeah, you can do this, and you can do this every day, a couple of times in the morning, in the evening, and in the afternoon, wherever it fits in. So that's one more technique. Now, I'd still like to share one more, and that is when we are constantly anxious, we are constantly in stress, and we cannot really deeply relax anymore, okay? So one technique comes from working with the vagus nerve. That is a primal nerve. It regulates many things. And so what we do is we take our left hand, we bring it over to our right ear. We bring our left ear closer to our shoulder. We release the shoulder. The right hand goes right here. And then we kind of pull a little bit. And we actually looking to the right-hand corner. And we do this for about 45 seconds. So we look to the right-hand corner, up, up, up. We breathe. So it can be 45 to 60 seconds. Often we have to yawn or something like this happens. Then we slowly bring our head up. We look to the front. Taking a nice deep breath. Then we take our right hand, bring it over to our left ear. Bring our right ear closer to the right shoulder. Our left hand goes right underneath our armpit to our rib cage. Shoulder down. And now we look up to the left-hand corner, and we do this again for about 45 to 60 seconds. We breathe calmly. When 45 to 60 seconds are over, we gently release, and then we let it go, and we look to the center. Okay, so these are already 3 very simple things you can share with your clients, no matter who you are. Of course, when there's deep trauma, it's really good to work with someone who is either an NLP trainer, a hypnocoach, a therapist. Someone, depending on where you live, can work with EMDR, EMI, many different techniques that allow us to shift the pictures in our head. And as I say, imagine your brain has a big library. When there's trauma, it constantly is a pop-up book that opens in front of your eyes. So EMDR, Hypno, NLP are great ways to close the book and to put it somewhere in the back. So whenever you need it, it is still there, but it's not constantly opening up by yourself. And so I wanted to share some of those techniques with you so that you have some tools in your hands that you can safely use. Of course, in my practice, use a lot of more things because I am not only an experienced midwife, but also an NLP trainer, a hypnotherapist. I've trained with the best people in the whole entire world, and that allows me to very easily and effortless work with empathy, but also, of course, with good knowledge to help women and their partners and even other birth professionals to overcome some trauma. Here's my true belief. I really know that some people think I had a trauma for so many years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, even longer. But you know, just because you had something happening in the past doesn't mean you have to drag it through the rest of your life into the present or even into the future that is not even here yet. Everyone has the right to live happy, and everyone should feel free to enjoy a happy pregnancy, a wonderful birth, and have the best start into life. Now, my name is Jutta Wohlrab, and my website is called juttawohlrab.com, and I really enjoy very much talking to you. I hope I have a chance to talk to you. If you have any questions, please get in touch. And I really hope you enjoy the rest of this wonderful, wonderful conference. And who knows, I might see you in person. Of course, you can contact me if you have any further questions or you like to have a chat about that, or even if there's something you need to be done about yourself. Of course, I'm very happy to help, and I hope you liked this presentation. It might have been quite different to what you thought it would be, but yeah, there's so many more things to talk about. One last thing is, if you liked it, please let me know. And if you have a question about it, please also let me know. I'm going to share my email with you. My email is, of course, jutta@juttawohlrab.com. And my website is Elements of Birth. And so I really hope to see all of you again. And I hope you thought what I shared with you is helpful. There's, of course, much more to say, but I think for right now, that's it. Have a wonderful time and really speak to you very, very soon. Bye for now.